Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya vaidikena yopakrutam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi stuve Patanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam katra sutrasya bhashyasya kramad vivaranasya cha. I think we are discussing the 17th Sutra of Sadhanapada. We are discussing how the Drashtadishayogo Samyogo Heya Hetu. So what is the actual cause of all the problems that we are facing? What are the problems? You have to remember, Heya means dukkha, something to be got rid of, for which we take to yoga, for which we take to mysticism, spiritual life, meditation, or whatever it is. So that particular point should be kept in mind. In fact, that is the very significance of the first sutra, Atha Yoga Anushasana. Atha literally could mean many things in Vedantic tradition, Indian philosophical tradition. Atha could mean now onwards, henceforth, therefore, and so on. So there's a background, a psychological background, a spiritual background, which prompts us to take to higher thinking, to something transcendental. And that background is a feeling of imperfection, incompleteness, which again can be felt only by an evolved mind, somebody who has the culture, the education, the maturity of outlook, would feel, well, I have all the money that I want, I have a big home, a good job, and all other wonderful things. Still, there is something much more wonderful that I am looking for, I should look for, to justify our human identity. So that feeling is rooted in the deep conviction, and the conviction that there is something wanting, incompleteness. It's called dukkha in Buddhist tradition. It's called heya in the yoga tradition. It is called roga, which means disease in Ayurvedic tradition. It's a quadrangle, Sadurvyuha. Now, here there is an interesting statement that comes from Vyasa and other commentators. So, Vyasa has got a statement, Drishyam ayaskanta manikalpa sannidhi matrena drishyattvena bhavadi purusasya swam drisirupasya swaminaka. See, there is a reason why I am quoting all these strange words, because they give you a clue to the original thinking. You see, you can speak a lot about what Aristotle said, but if you can quote one word from Aristotle, it makes a lot of difference. So the ability to connect with that higher traditional wisdom coming from ancient sages, it makes a lot of difference. So here, for example, see the depth of thought and the psychological insight that Vyasa displays here. He says, the mind, that's called chitta, like a magnet. So ayaskanta means magnet. So ayaskanta mani is a small piece of magnet. So like a magnet, by its very proximity and objectivity, because the magnet comes in close proximity and objectivity to a piece of iron. Like that, the mind comes close in proximity and objectivity, close to purusa. And then what happens? And the purusa is honor, in the sense the real entity, the self-effulgent entity. And it is of pure consciousness. So what happens is, there's a magnet attracts iron pieces and this helps the honor of the magnet in getting those iron pieces. So also the mind attracts some sense objects and helps purusa in enjoying them. So purusa, here remember, purusa is the self-effulgent entity. It connects with the objective world, and it connects with the objective world through this strange entity with magnetic power called mind. Now this is the real problem, and yoga is an attempt, or any spiritual tradition, any spiritual wisdom is an attempt to de-identify on the part of Purusha, an attempt to de-identify with the external world. And then we want to get back to our real home, real identity, that is Purusha. So our mind attracts whatever it comes in contact with. When I see something, we feel attracted. We may not get it, but the attraction creates a vritti, a tendency, an impression, and that will remain there. That is an important point to remember. It's not that we are going to get it, but the desire to get it is enough for the mind to be colored by that object. So a child who goes to an ice cream shop and the mother, and he asks the mother, let me have an ice cream. The mother says, well, it's not good for you. But the child cries and weeps and returns home. That night, he may see a dream. He's eating wonderful ice cream and his mother is feeding him ice cream. This for the child, but this happens to every human being. It may not be an ice cream for a grown-up person. It may be something else. It may be desire of different types. So this is how mind gets colored. That's why Vyasa and other commentators compares the mind to a magnet. So this is what really causes this inherent incompleteness. The ability to feel this as a state of imperfection, as a dukkha, as a state of incompleteness, comes to a highly evolved person, and that person one day go to the library, oh, enough of all this. Let me see what the Bible says, what the Bhagavad Gita says, or what any Dhammapada says, or any religious holy book says. He may go to a temple or a synagogue or a church and may discuss ideas, or he may at least take to music, higher music I am talking about, or he may take to poetry. He may just go one step beyond the empirical, the physical. That happens when we are somehow convinced of the basic inherent incompleteness of objective world. That's why Buddha says Trishna, or desire, is the mother of birth, life and death, the triple levels of reincarnation, the past life, the present life and the future life, are connected together by this dual link, praditya samadpada, etc. And he devised the method. You should first of all be convinced of the incompleteness, that is the Four Noble Truths related to dukkha, and then take to nirvana. Of course, that's a different subject now. Now, this is the background for the next sutra, that is 18th sutra. We already discussed this earlier, but anyway, I can, because these sutras should be kept in mind. They are interrelated, that's why frequently little repetition may not be altogether without its use, so to speak. Now coming to the 18th sutra. The 18th sutra is Prakasha Kriya Sthiti Seelam Bhudendriyatmakam Bhogapavargartham Drishyam. What is Drishya? What is the objective world? It consists of all the senses of perception, all the senses of action, all that comes within the purview of human mind, all that we interact with, which again can be analyzed according to three gunas, the four human temperaments, sattva guna, raja guna, and tamo guna. This is the objective world that we have got in front of us, which we consider to be a state of imperfection. So the basic idea, this life that we are leading today, with all these wonderful things around us, with all the aspirations, are necessary, but there is a higher possibility, there is a transcendental and higher possibility of life and existence. There is a higher option. This is not to be discarded. That should be understood. Very often, yoga philosophy, before the later half of 19th century, or rather before the last decades of 19th century, historically speaking, yoga philosophy was known somehow, in some way or other, in European countries, and also according to ancient history, in places like Alexandria, in Damascus, in Baghdad, in all these places, the yoga idea was quite prevalent. So you can find the influence of yoga psychology in the writing, in the teachings of Thales, the teachings of Heraclitus, in the even you can see the traces of this yoga ideal in the great teachings of Socrates, Aristotle, and others, and also in the higher teachings of mysticism that were prevalent in Alexandria and other places. So anyway, but the point is, before Vivekananda's exposition of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, historically the first real attempt to introduce yoga to Western English-speaking world, before that, yoga was more or less traditionally interpreted to be a life-negating, a world-negating kind of asceticism. That's mostly because yoga is practiced by Mahayana Buddhists and also Jaina monks who were extreme ascetics. And also even Hinayana Buddhists were also adepts in yoga practices. They practiced some kinds of extreme forms of meditation based on yoga teachings. So it was considered to be very close to the ancient monastic ideal, meant for monastics. So that was historically the cause for the idea that yoga is something life-negating, world-negating. Then Vivekananda gave a very, very simple, a common man's interpretation or introduction to yoga. So after that, of course, in succeeding decades, it became very popular. So you find here the external world and material world is analyzed in order to present before you a higher option, not to negate it, not to deny its reality, and not to discard it, but to present before us a higher option. So you can find here Drishyam. What is Drishyam? Drishyam is what we see, what becomes known, what is experienced, what is seen, what is perceived. That is the objective phenomenal world. And also our own mental, intellectual feelings, all can be called, or can be categorized, put under the umbrella term of Drishyam, means what is seen, the objective world. So what is the Drishyam? It is Prakasha Kriya Sthiti Sheelam. So Prakasha, of the nature of illumination, serenity, knowledge, wisdom, that is Sattva-guna. And then Kriya. Kriya actually means action, Rajoguna. So you can understand these characteristics only by observing persons endowed with these characteristics. If a person is wise, intelligent, strong, but who knows how to use that strength, as mentioned yesterday, as power, but knows how to use that power. He is not used by power, he uses power. That ability to handle what we have got with maturity and wisdom, with knowledge and understanding, is characteristic of a person endowed with Sattva-guna. And Rajoguna, a person who is hyperactive, efficient, driven by a sense of ambition, not altogether devoid of wisdom, but they gives more emphasis to activity. That characteristic. So Rajoguna cannot be completely devoid of some amount of Sattva-guna, but the predominance is given to the active temperament. That is called Rajoguna. And Tamoguna, ignorance, inertia, confusion, restlessness, all can be called Tamoguna. So, Kshiptam and Mudam, these two characteristics, according to the state of human mind, vrittis, a person who is restless not because he's active, he's totally confused. The other person is absurdly inert, inactive, because totally dumb. This state of mind or this temperament, inertia, ignorance, is called Tamoguna. So there are three human temperaments. Now, what yoga tells you is the objective experiences all can be analyzed and understood by analyzing them according to these three temperaments. And yoga tells us all the evolutes of prakriti, including cosmic intelligence, mind, senses, 5 elements, and the subtle elements called tanmatras, all are constituted or dominated by these three gunas: Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. So, this objective experience of universe it consists of knowledge, that is Sattva-guna, action, Rajoguna, and a kind of stagnant inner condition, Tamoguna. And then it expresses itself in the forms of the objective phenomenal world, then the 5 senses of perception, the 5 senses of action, mind, and all this. And then one statement is the bhogapavargartham drishyam. That is the meaning. What is it? It is meant for the enjoyment of drashta. That's why, say bhogapavargartham drishyam. So it is drashtuhu bhogapavargartham. That's the meaning. It is for the benefit. What it means is, how do we identify our true nature with drashta or purusa? By experiencing all this. And then by getting tired of all this. And then by detaching ourselves from all this. Through pradiprasava. By evolving further. So that's what happens when we are tired of this objective world. All the money, wealth, etc. Enough of this. A time comes, like it happened to Buddha, and he wanted to see some higher meaning in life. So, for this purpose only the whole world is created. In other words, yoga tells you this world is in front of you, not for you to enjoy, but for you to transcend, but for you to go beyond. And when you go beyond, what happens? Then you understand that your true identity is beyond this objective world. So, if a person wants to eat a wonderful, delicious food, you make him eat it day and night, 3 times, 4 times. Then that will, enough of all this. I want to have something else. There is no other way for the common person. If you tell an average person, this world is not so good. Suppose you are somebody struggling to get a good job, maybe working in the finance, in the Wall Street, let us say, trying to make money. Naturally, it's natural, normal for human beings. If you tell a person this money is not good for you, he will call you crazy. You can't tell that to a person. Sri Krishna says, "Na buddhivedam janayed ajnanam karma sankinam." You cannot go and directly tell a person, this is not good for you. But you watch for some time. The person, along with that, he also reads some higher books. He also practices some spiritual disciplines. And also he also engages himself, indulges himself in all these worldly enjoyments. Then one day, he will realize, enough of all this. I want something higher. But if you tell him at the beginning itself, it doesn't work, it will not work. So this objective world is there in front of us. It is needed. In fact, that is stated much more categorically in the 19th Sutra. There is a 19th Sutra which I will discuss later. Tadartham eva drishyasya atma. Tadartham actually means it is for the drashta, for the purusa, that these external things exist. That means atma here means the swarupa. In other words, the world and all these objective experiences are there in front of us for us to go beyond. If we don't have it in front of us, we won't strive hard. Actually, this is part of spiritual psychology. It's a fact. Human evolution. If a child is born, like Shankaracharya, when he was a little child, he studied all the 4 Vedas by 3 years old, and by 6 years old he became a monk, 6-7 years old. What does it mean? He is some kind of a special human being? Not at all. In his previous life, he was convinced, enough all this, or maybe several life cycles earlier. So next, if somebody like Ramana Maharshi, father passes away, and suddenly this man realizes. So this is all about human life. All this money, wealth, bank balance, everything one day disappear. The body also goes away. So this could happen to me also. So there should be some higher meaning behind. So all these experiences are there for you to go beyond, to help you to look at a higher level, to look beyond. That's the meaning. Actually, we'll discuss the subject. The next sutra will discuss that. Tadartham eva drishyasya atma. 21st sutra actually deals with this subject. So, in the 18th sutra, the author tells us that this objective world, that means what is seen, that is, in Vedanta we call Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. All these, what we hear, what we touch, what we taste, what we see, what we smell, and also all the objects of other senses of actions, they are all meant for what? For the liberation of Purusha. Now remember, the Yoga Sutra tells us that there are as many Purusas as there are human beings. It's called Aneka Purusha Siddhanta, the doctrine of multiple Atma. So that's why yoga is rooted in this kind of strong dualism, plurality of existence. So each soul, each jiva is its own Atman. I already mentioned during interaction in the last class. So one person because of his experiences and because of his conviction that I have to go beyond all this, he reaches that higher experience. Then he really identifies, well, I am not just this body-mind complex that enjoys these external things. I have a higher identity. And once you practice the Ashtanga Yoga, I mean yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, etc. Then one day you realize. In fact, if you study the psychological aspects of the first two disciplines, yama and niyama, you will understand these 10 disciplines themselves will convince us of the reality of higher evolution. See, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, pure life, non-receiving of gifts, non-receiving of gifts, that is called aparigraha. Then sauja, santosha, tapaswa, adhyaya, isapadithana, inner purity, internal purity, external purity, contentment, practicing contentment, then austerity, then reading and listening to holy words, feeding our mind with good spiritual food, and then resigning to God. If a person really practices these 10 disciplines, of which the first one, yama, are called universal. It's for every human being. It's not just for those who practice yoga. It's meant for every civilized human being, yamas. And niyamas actually automatically come to those who practice yama. Now if you practice this, then you cannot really live like a child, even when you are a grown-up person. Because a child may go for ice cream, a grown-up person may strive to make millions of dollars. Practically it's a difference in degrees, not in difference of kind. So then you actually will understand, well, contentment, let's say contentment. Real contentment comes when you're convinced that all these things are there for me, but I should look for something higher. And in fact, an attempt to look for something higher itself produces a great joy. And this is a very important principle in spiritual psychology. An attempt to practice a higher ideal is not because you are going to reach a higher ideal, but an attempt or the idea there is a higher ideal in front of you will help you to conserve and organize your skills and energy resources in a positive direction. The goal you may not attain in this life, but that should not pour cold water in our mind. So a higher ideal you should have, not because you are fully convinced that this higher ideal is attainable in this life, but a higher ideal is necessary for us. Higher ideal is samadhi according to Ashtanga Yoga. Mean going beyond drishya, beyond objective world, and identifying our true identity with purusa according to yoga tradition. It may take maybe several more life cycles, but still, if we have got this higher ideal in front of our horizon, then that itself gives us a tremendous contentment. But I can give you an example. I have occasion to read some of the autobiographical writings of many Christian mystics, including the Russian Orthodox mystic like Pilgrim, and also St. Teresa of Avila, quite a few. Now, often if you wonder and if you observe, if you think how these great mystics who were given to praying, St. Peter of Alejandra, for example, a small tiny monastery, supposed to be the smallest monastery in the world. He was a tall man, nearly more than 6 feet, but he lived in a tiny cell, less than 4 feet width and length, and that was a kind of austere life he led. And he didn't sleep for long. How could they practice these great austerities? Oh, the great ancient sages of India. Today also you find, of course, the number may have gone down. Today also you find in Himalayas people who practice extreme kinds of austerities. Now, how is it humanly possible for them to do that? The real answer is they have a higher ideal in front of them. It may be it's the same spiritual goal expressed in different languages, in different religious traditions, in different spiritual traditions. Christianity in one language, Judaism in another language, Hinduism in totally different language. But the higher ideal as such is common. It's a common property of these great spiritual seekers. The idea that this higher ideal is attainable and they are slowly moving towards the attainment of this higher ideal, that itself produces a great spiritual energy which enables them to withstand many difficulties. In the context, in the history of Christian mystics, they were persecuted, they were disowned by the mainstream church, that face a lot of obstacles, but still they withstood all this and they continued living holy lives. Of course, in Indian context, there was no persecution, but they were all living in mountain forests, hermitages surrounded by wild animals and wilder human beings frequently. Still they could do that. So the point is, if you have a higher ideal in front of us, that itself produces a spiritual energy. So now Swami Vivekananda's contribution was, he presented yoga in front of mainstream society. This higher ideal is possible for everyone. For that you need not go to a forest, you need not go to a monastery or a small cell. You can live right in this world, in the midst of your everyday duties and responsibilities. Still remember, there is a higher goal, there is a higher spiritual identity that is yours, that is attainable, and that requires only one simple condition. That is, you should be convinced that I have all this money, wealth, status, job, everything. Still, it's a state of imperfection. I should look for a higher goal. The striving for the higher goal. But that is the idea expressed in this sutra. Prakasha kriya sthiti silam bhudendriyatmakam bhogapavagartham, means it is for the experience of liberation. Apavarga means liberation of purusas. All these things are there for you to look beyond them. That's the idea behind it. Now we have to take the 19th sutra. So that is the sutra is simple. Vishesha avishesha lingamatra lingani gunaparvani. That is the meaning here. So here are certain words are here. One is Vishesha avishesha lingamatra alingani. So we will describe this, what is Vishesha, what is Avishesha, what is Lingamatra, and what is Alinka. The idea is the prakriti or pradhana is the material cause and also efficient cause of this universe. And this universe of multiplicity exists, or rather say plurality or intra-differences, distinctions exist because of the combination of these three gunas, that is Sattva-guna, Rajoguna and Tamoguna. Now, Vishesha, Avishesha means. Vishesha means diversified. Avishesha means undiversified. Lingamatra, it means an indicator only. And that which is without any indication, it is alinga. These are technical terms, so we need some explanation. One is Vishesha. This particular division that is called the diversified, it means it includes the 5 gross elements. The 5 gross elements is matter, water principle, fire principle, air and space. These are the gross elements which constitute this empirical universe. It is part of the Vishesha. Then so it's a Vishesha can also be called particularized, may be used. And then the subtle elements of Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. That is what you hear, what you see, what you touch, what you smell and what you taste. These are the 5 different ways by which the senses of perception gets their knowledge by connecting with external world. When the eyes connect with an object, a visual object, the mind gets the knowledge of that visual object because of the eyes. When we taste something, we get the knowledge of the particular thing that we eat with the help of the sense of taste. So also there's the sense of smell, the sense of touch and the sense of hearing. So all these, that is Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas and mind, which are particularized modifications of Asmita. Of course, there is one point, remember, those who read seriously the Yoga Sutra and compared with this with Sankhya philosophy, you find the mainstream Sankhya philosophy, if you ever read a book on Sankhya philosophy, you find the word ahankara is used, because Sankhya philosophy, as we understand today, is based on Sankhya Karika by the writer known as Ishvara Krishna. And according to Ishvara Krishna, all these external experiences, objective world, consist of evolutes of prakriti. It all evolved from prakriti. Everything. So what we see in front of us, the mountain, the trees, and the eyes by which we see those things, and the mind that perceives, and the intellect. And also the subtle elements of these 5 elements. All these consist of 23 evolutes of prakriti. It is the concept of India's evolutionary doctrine. So purusa and prakriti are 2 entities. Purusa doesn't cause any evolution. Prakriti, from prakriti all the evolution begins. The first evolute is Mahattvatvam, cosmic intelligence. Then Ahankara. And from Ahankara goes 3 dimensions: Sattvika, Rajasika and Tamasika. This is the Sankhya view. Now, if you read the Yoga Sutra books, you don't find this Ahankara mentioned. Instead of Ahankara, the word Asmita is mentioned. That's a term used by Vyasa, because Vyasa was the person who made Yoga Sutras accessible to us. Without Vyasa's exposition, which is the first of the major expositions, Yoga Sutras would not have really had any meaning for the layman unless they study from a teacher in a traditional Gurukula where these things are transmitted. So, in the Sankhya context, you find the word Ahankara is used. Ahankara is broadly translated as egoity, egoism and so on in English language. So egoism has got a different meaning in literature. So frequently they use the rarer term egoity. And Vyasa has used a much more technical and much more accurate, in fact, term is called asmita. I mean our own egoity. That's a better translation. So that should be kept in mind. You can find this difference. Though yoga philosophy has taken everything from Sankhya, there are a few differences with regard to technical terms used. Now we will come to the 20th Sutra. The 20th Sutra is, I think I mentioned, Drashta Drishimatraha Shuddhaha Abhi Pratyayanupashyaha. This is Sutra. Drashta Drishimatraha Shuddhaha Api Pratyayanupashyaha. Drashta here means Purusha. The word Drashta is always used as to mean Purusha in the yoga system. And remember, in Swamiji's exposition, Swamiji frequently uses the word Atma or Atman. But that is perfectly understandable because Sankhya philosophy was a technical system of philosophy, was not so much known in the Western world before Swamiji. So, but in reality, Drashta can only be understood as Atman. Because the seer is a term, when translated into English, it can sometimes be misleading. So the word Atma is a safer translation. That's Drashta. Drishyamatra. Drishyamatra means it is essentially of the nature of jnana. And it is Shuddha, it is pure. The Purusha, Drashta, Atma is pure. Why? Because it doesn't get involved in evolution. It remains the same. Atma, Purusha is the same. It is consciousness, it is ever effulgent, it is unchanging, it is multiple, it is plural. So remember the Aneka Purusha Siddhanta. According to yoga philosophy, Sankhya philosophy, the same Purusha, there is as many Purushas as there are human beings. When one person reaches his real identification with his Purusha dimension, others also may not have reached, others have to struggle in their own way. So this idea behind. And they have special reverence and respect for those who have reached this Purusha identity. Sometimes they are called gurus, acharyas, prakriti lina purushas, those who have reached this goal in the past. So that is Shuddha. Shuddha, the word Shuddha is pure. The meaning is it doesn't undergo any evolution or change. There is no parinama, it's called. Still, Pratyayanupashya. But still, that Purusha has to use Buddhi. Buddhi, called Chittam, are identical in this context. As we mentioned earlier, Buddhi, Chitta works like a magnet. It attracts external things in the external world, and Purusha connects with these external things by being reflected in the Buddhi, and therefore Purusha begins to identify itself with these external things. Well, in actual human psychology, how it operates, I can explain. When we forget, and we often forget, mostly we are in a forgetful mood, when we forget our Purusha identity, then what happens? Our mind is called Chittam. It attracts external things. So when a person sees something attractive, because the person forgets his true Purusha identity, he identifies himself with the prakriti, so he connects with these external things, and he begins to interpret himself. I am the one seeing these things. So like that, I am happy now, I am unhappy, this is my name, I have this job, I am rich, I am poor, aham dukhi, aham sukhi, you find in Sanskrit language is used. One is painful, one is pleasant and unpleasant. Like that, we go on identifying ourselves with every single external experiences. Our purpose is to reverse this. How do we reverse this? It's called, we use the word pratiprasava, which leads to asampraඥāta samadhi, which we are going to discuss in the samadhipada. So when we de-identify, when we detach ourselves with all these external experiences, we reverse the process called, reverse evolution, pratiprasava. Prasava means coming down, taking birth, descending to the external world. Pratiprasava means we are actually ascending. And as we go on ascending, we go on de-identifying or detaching ourselves from these external things. And then we realize our true identity, we are Purusha. This is how it really works. This desire to detach ourselves from these momentary impulses and experiences and look for a higher transcendental identity, that comes to an evolved person. We discussed this in the 15th Sutra of Sadhanapada. That is Parinama Tapa Samskara Dukkaihi Gunavrutti Visheshacha Dukkameva Sarvam Vivekinaha. Viveki is a person, a person, any human being of higher wisdom, higher intellectual, spiritual, cultural maturity. And when we reach this level of maturity, then we develop a desire to look for some higher goal. And that's how we actually begin our reverse evolution. So, now coming to the sutra. Now we'll come to the 21st sutra that we already discussed earlier, but we can do that. Tadartha eva drishyasya atma. Drishyasya means, this is prakriti, means prakritis. Atma. Atma here means surupa. Here atma means, surupa means true nature, true dimension. That's the idea behind it. Atma here doesn't mean the Atma is used in Advaita text. We should not mix up together. So, Atma here means true nature. So, Drishyasya Atma means the true nature of this Prakriti, Tadartheva. It is only for Drashta, for Purusha. We already discussed this earlier in my earlier visit. Vyasa says the existence of Prakriti has relevance only as long as it serves the purpose of Purusha. The whole world is for us to go beyond it, to understand the possibility of higher options by going beyond what we see in front of us, around us. This idea behind. Purpose of the world is for us to go beyond it. Without this world, we would not have thought of going beyond it. This idea can be found in the Upanishads also, Janaka Yajnavalkya Samvada, you find here. Well, that we'll discuss later. So, if very frequently many commentators discuss this, and they explain this sometimes in the light of one great statement in Shankaracharya, Manushyuttam Mumukshuttam Mahapurusha Samseha. three unique gifts from God. One is this privilege of being born as a human being. Then the higher and rarer privilege of having a spiritual ideal, mumukshutvam, the desire for liberation. And a third gift from God, call it nature or whatever it is, third privilege that people should look for is association with people who will remind you of this higher possibility. That is the greatest thing. So, that's the greatest gift that a true friend can give you. A true friend can give us this possible option, can give this possible idea. There's a higher possibility in our life, the higher transcendental spiritual possibility, going beyond the psychophysical dimension and moving towards the spiritual dimension. That's why Durlabham Trayamevaidat, that's how Shankaracharya begins here. So these three Edatrayam, mean these three unique, rare gifts, Daivanugraha Hetukam, that is, it comes as a gift of the grace of God. Daivanugraha Hetukam means actually it happens by the grace of God. That's what Shankaracharya puts in Vivekachudamani. Manushyatvam, being born as a human being, and then being born as a human being with a spiritual aspiration for liberation, and then an opportunity to connect with, to associate with people whose association can gradually lead us to realizing this higher spiritual potential. So that is the idea behind, here. I mean, the whole world is for us not to enjoy, nor to suffer, but to transcend, go beyond. That's the idea behind. Tadartham eva drisyasya atma. We will discuss later. We will continue this in the next class. Thank you. Namaskar. Now we can have interaction. Most welcome.
Maharaj, a question from last time.
Yeah.
You talked about the purusa and prakriti,
Yeah.
and also it's all individual jiva.
Yeah.
And as you told in the 20th sutra,
Yeah.
so individual jiva has to realize the purusa, and that's the goal.
Yeah.
Is there a role for collective consciousness?
Oh, no. No, yoga and Sankhya won't accept this. This is only in Advaita Vedanta, a fringe school of Advaita Vedanta. Sarvamuktivada means the doctrine of common multiple liberation. Sarvamukti Siddhanta. It's not there in Veda, in yoga. Yoga doesn't say that the whole society cannot do that. No. Every jiva has to work by reversing this evolution and gradually be able to identify with this transcendental purusa dimension. That's the only way to get apavarga. Apavarga means liberation. Yeah.
Okay.
Pranam Maharaj.
Yeah.
The evolution from Prakriti is first Mahat comes and then Ahankara. From Ahankara, Tanmatras come, and one of them is the Akasha. I interpret it as space. Swami Vivekananda says the whole universe is Desha Kala Nimitta.
Yeah.
If the Akasha is interpreted as Desha, when is the time evolving from this sequence? Where is the
Yeah,
time
yeah, yeah.
versus?
Yeah, no, time is not discussed the way we understand in these philosophical systems. Time itself is something relative. Yoga and Sankhya and also Vedanta are discussing reality and existence not in relation to our earth. In fact, what we call time is really only an imagination. Time is never the same. You can, your time frequently depends on how you feel it. If somebody pricks you with a needle, every split second is very long and very painful. But when you are seeing let us say a very wonderful drama or something, long hours may sound like a few minutes. So that's relative. Again, this earth rotates around its own axis, and it moves around the sun. So our concept of time is based on a small, tiny, fragmentary interplay of the sun and one of its planets. And there are innumerable stars, and it is possibly innumerable or infinite number. We can't even imagine how many stars and planets. So what we understand by time, let's say 60 seconds, 60 minutes, 7 days, 1 month, a year, maybe millions of billions of years, that's again very, very relative. So time, space and causation can also be explained in one way to describe prakriti. And prakriti includes akasha, prithvi, apa, tejo, vayu, akasha, all this. So everything in this world, including prakriti, which is an empirical entity, is within time and space. And that's why it's called relative. It is only relative. So that time itself is relative, and our empirical universe itself is bound by time and bound by space. So Swamiji was trying to explain this yoga ideal in the light of contemporary findings in physics and also in the context of Vedanta, which was little more known. So you find in many contexts Swamiji uses the word for drashta. Swamiji sometimes uses the word Atman because that term was more common. It is the first introduction of yoga psychology and yoga philosophy, actually Sankhya philosophy, to Western world. Before that, there is no real exposition of it. Ishwara Krishna Sankhya was already translated into German, into some of the European languages, even before Swamiji, of course. In 18th century, Sankhya was translated in German. But it never really connected with the reading people. Even in India today, those who don't read Vivekananda never really think of yoga as something serious. They study yoga philosophy in colleges, universities, as one of the Saddarsanas. But you won't get any insight into this. So anyway, I'm not going to that. So the point is, coming back to the subject, time is not so actively discussed because time is essentially, the word kala is used, but kala cannot be equated with what we normally understand by the English word time. The English word time is a very limited, it's much more limited in its scope than kala. Kala is sometimes used as the one that consumes empirical world. Kalo jagat bhakshaka. You find time, the kala is again translated to time. The kala is interpreted as the one that consumes creation. So please remember, that's an idea behind. Swamiji used the word time as a limiting factor, as one of the components of Maya and one of the components of relativity. And the prakriti and all the 23 evolutes are within time and space. Why? They are relative. They are not absolute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bobby, ask your question.
You. Good evening, Maharaj.
Yeah. Oh, Bobby, most welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Is it correct to think that in order for idealists to not misdirect their idealism, because after all, anyone can say, "Oh, I'm on the higher path. This is my goal. It's a worthy one."
Yeah.
Is it correct to think that the yamas and niyamas are a prerequisite to make sure that one isn't falsely idealistic?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. That is true. So
But
you are right.
On the way, articulating some sort of ideal, knowing that you might, need to check yourself.
True.
I mean, you wouldn't want to be not idealistic and focus on function only through yama and niyama.
Yes.
Both work together, yes?
Yeah. I was, when I used the word ideal, I meant a spiritual ideal. And a genuine spiritual ideal will be built upon the bedrock of yamas and niyamas. Because if when a person practices yamas and niyamas, it prevents him from going in the opposite direction, in the wrong direction. Whatever ideal he will formulate in his mind, if he has got yamas and niyamas, that ideal will be for his own good and also for the good of everyone, for the good of the whole world. That's why the yamas are considered to be universal spiritual disciplines. Sarvapriyananda is called, means it's for everyone, it's for everyone. So it is a universal spiritual ideal that is presented in the yamas and niyamas. You are right. Any ideal, to be an ideal, to be genuine higher ideal, should be built upon these principles of yamas and niyamas. Correct.
The one interesting thing that you said earlier was about how Sankhya philosophy may have dualistic elements, but it's still a worthy subject for non-dualists to examine for reasons of its systemic approach to these issues of the mind and its control.
Yeah.
And that seems like it's so often the case that we would review things that we would know to have faults, to mine them for their qualities, even knowing that they were imperfect. So many things seem to be like that.
Yeah. In fact, all the Sankhyan explanation of mind, intellect, buddhis, 5 elements, all these are accepted in Vedanta, except the conclusion. There's in Indian philosophy, there is this methodology of samana siddhantavada, means pratipaksha siddhantavada. Between two systems of philosophy, there could be two types of relationship. One system of philosophy may take in general many of the details of another system of philosophy, but won't accept the conclusions. That's a relationship between Sankhya and Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta, the definition of mana, buddhi, mind, intellect, indriyas, senses, all are more or less identical in Vedanta and also in Sankhya and also yoga. But the point is, in both Sankhya and yoga, there are two fundamental eternal categories. So there is a very strong, rigid dualism. That is what Vedanta is reject. But the details of analysis of human mind, all these are fully accepted in Sankhya and Yoga philosophy and Vedanta.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
There's a question from YouTube by Dr. Lula. I'll try to paraphrase this. Why should we be born as human beings and then have the desire for liberation and realize who we are?
Yeah, that's again, every person has his own or her own idea of liberation. Now, why should everyone strive for liberation? The desire for liberation may not come to everyone in one's life, but it is bound to come to everyone at some stage in our evolution. That's Vedanta says. If we don't feel any need for liberation, if we are ready to live in this world and make a wonderful life in this world, Vedanta or Yoga, no quarrel with that. Absolutely okay. You don't know, naturally, perfectly okay. Because we have not reached that level of evolution, So, in a way, everyone has his own or her own ideal, but the same ideal cannot be thrust upon everyone. Why should we consider this world as imperfect, as incomplete? Well, why should Buddha consider he was a prince, plenty of money, no work to do, everything wonderful? Why should he walk 1,000 miles to 1,200, 300 miles and walk and sit under a tree and practicing the austerities? Absolutely. But you ask him, he will give an explanation. Like that, those who have got this higher ideal of liberation, they have their own idea. But everyone need not have at one stage. Yeah, you are right. There is no need. It is not mandatory that everyone should consider this world as imperfect or incomplete. Even in Vedanta, also in the Bhakti tradition, Vedanta Bhakti tradition, Vaishnava Bhakti tradition, you find this life is a boon. So I can take the name of God. So if I find Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, the teachings of the great devotional acharyas of India, you find this life of God, He gave me this life and He gave me a healthy body and healthy mind so that I can take your name, I can serve you, I can go to the temple, I can clean the place, I can do puja to you, I can worship you, I can meditate on you, I can read the Bhagavata. You find such ideas in the Bhagavata Purana. They don't consider this world as something miserable, not at all. In just one view you find in the Sankhya, especially Yoga tradition. Modern Sankhya and Yoga tradition you find. That's what we are discussing. It's not common even in Hindu tradition. In Bhakti school, it is not very common. Yeah. Kunti, one of the greatest characters in the world human literature. It's a long, she had gone through every possible conceivable kind of misery and tragedy in her life. And her prayer to God was, give me a few more troubles. Because when I don't have a trouble or problem, I don't think of you. So I forget you. So give me more trouble. So that I can never forget you. Vipada Sanduna Saswat Yatra Yatra Jagat Prabhu. Give me more trouble so that I will remember you. So you cannot quarrel with a great person like Kunti. So she considered difficulties as a boon because it will make her think of God. So that's the idea. Thank you.
Good evening, Swamiji.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you. Good evening.
This is Mark.
Yeah.
You talked tonight about Ahamkara and also Asmita, the ego.
Yeah.
My question is, should we be wary of our ego? Is the ego an enemy, or is it necessary to to have some sense of ego. I know that Sri Ramakrishna talks about it in his teachings. The eye, and how we want to have the pure eye. But what is your take on this concept of ego, and how should we relate to ego?
In this particular context, when I use the word asmita used by Vyasa and ahangara as used by Ishvara Krishna in the Sankhya, the word ahangara is used as one of the evolutes of prakriti. But when you mentioned ego, I understand you mean by ego the human impulse, the human temperament. Well, according to mainstream spiritual teachers, ego is not altogether bad, not entirely bad. A healthy ego is a great help and is a great source of strength and help for our spiritual evolution. Even to have a higher ideal, based on yamas and niyamas, as Bobby mentioned, even to have a higher ideal and to stick to that ideal, we need ego. So ego can be a positive, it can have a positive aspect, positive dimension. It can be negative dimension. So a strong sense of idealism, strong sense of identity, confidence, and a sense of pride in doing something noble and good for others, for oneself. For that we need a healthy ego. That's very important. One should never try to, I don't want to be egoistic, I don't want any ego. If you are sincere, this is a problem, because our mind will go blank. A student who is working hard to get a higher grade in school, if you tell the student, no, you should not have an ego, his mind will go blank, because he won't be able to set a goal in front of him to achieve something. So a healthy ego is a great help. Ego becomes a problem only when it prevents us in developing a healthy relationship with others. But a healthy ego need not necessarily create any problem in our interaction with others. That's the idea behind. Healthy, positive ego is a must. Actually, you find surprisingly, I mentioned these mystics. They were very egoistic in a very positive sense. They had to face persecutions. See, the during medieval times, Christian mystics. You think of Saint Teresa of Avila, you think of Saint John of Cross, you think of anybody you find. They never gave up, in spite of a lot of problems they had to face. They had a very healthy, strong ego. The ego actually took them towards God. Why? Because they had strong faith in God. God will protect them. They will realize the ideal. See, look at Vivekananda. He was a man of tremendous self-confidence. He had to face a lot of difficulties in his life, but he had tremendous self-confidence. So, we should always remember this a healthy, a strong spiritual feeling, temperament is not ego as we understand in normal human conversation. It is a positive asset for our spiritual life. As I get.
So you can have a strong ego and still realize the Atman.
Well, when you actually evolve to a higher level, then you find you actually transcend the ego. When we start our spiritual life, a healthy ego will be a great help. But a strong, healthy ego with which it makes us confident, gives us a sense of inner strength to do spiritual disciplines, to do the right thing as we understand it. When we do that, at some point, as part of our own evolution and spiritual growth, we'll find this ego has disappeared. That's what happens. A spiritual ego will eventually take you to a stage where you're totally devoid of ego completely. Your ego embraces the whole world. It ceases to be ego as we normally understand in human conversation. That's the idea.
So through spiritual practices, the ego gets purified.
Purified, yeah. Purified, refined, purified. So it becomes sublime, sublimated. Yeah. But the beginning of our spiritual life, self-confidence, inner strength of conviction are most essential. They're very important. Yeah. To do anything noble, anything good, anything worthwhile in our life, we need a strong self-confidence, determination. That is an expression of ego in its most positive aspects. Without that, no one can live and do anything, either for himself or for others. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Thank you. So if you have no questions, we'll conclude. Thank you for the questions. The questions give me a chance to explain things more elaborately. I may have overlooked during my talk. So the questions actually give me an opportunity. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.